according to that clock and this clock, it's time to start. So we'll start. Exodus chapter 19. Exodus chapter 19. And what verse did y'all get through?
15.
15?
Through 15 there.
All right.
Been told to get ready.
All right. Told to get ready. So, since I was gone, if you don't mind, let me just bring myself up to speed and maybe do a little review here of the first part of chapter 19. This is a really, really critical, pivotal point in what's happening. As a matter of fact, if I were to say one of the most important chapters in the Old Testament, I would say chapter 19 is going to be right up there, linked together with a few other chapters. It's vital to what's taking place. So it's been 3 months since they've left Egypt. They've made it all the way down, crossing the Red Sea, down into the Sinai Peninsula, and they have come to Mount Horeb, or Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. And remember, God had told Moses that when he led the children of Israel out, he would come back and worship on that mountain. So God has brought them to that point. But verse 4 through 6, God says to the children of Israel, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." In other words, you saw what kind of God I am, what I can offer as a God. "Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel." What God is doing here is He's offering them a covenant. And I don't know how to, I think I've become more and more impressed with this, but I have to allow myself to be impressed with it because I've so frequently taken it for granted. The idea that Almighty God would offer an agreement to people to enter into this special bond. Now, He told Abraham that his descendants would become a great nation. What do we estimate the number population-wise is of this group of people right now? Yeah, a couple million, something like that. Is that a great nation?
A lot of people.
It's a lot of people, but I mean, really, it was a small percentage of Egypt's population. Egypt was a great nation. Here's what I want to say. Israel has never been a great nation in that they were the most populous or had the greatest territory or anything like that. That was not how they were going to be a great nation. They were going to be a great nation because you'll be to me a special people, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. They were going to be different from all the rest of the world in that their lives were going to be different. Their character was going to be different because God was going to be in a special relationship with them, close to them, guiding them, teaching them, and they were going to be gravitating towards God. And that was what was going to be so awesome about the children of Israel, is they were going to be a reflection of the Creator of the world. How did that work out? They didn't do great with it. So God said, "I'll make a new covenant." Guess what is so great and awesome about the covenant that we're part of, the agreement that we're part of? Because the same message is given to us, that we're to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. This idea that God is willing to separate out for Himself certain people and have this really close relationship with them is an amazing thing. I've tried to think about, what this would be like. And if you were an entrepreneur and you had a product, and, imagine that Costco, Walmart, Target, whatever, comes and offers you an exclusive agreement saying, "We'll buy every product that you have. And we want to enter into this relationship with you, and we're going to promote your product, and we're going to sell your product, and we're going to give you 50% of all the profit from that." You go from a struggling entrepreneur, inventor of a product, to being a multi-millionaire, soon to be billionaire, in a matter of weeks. Can you imagine how coveted and a contract, an agreement like that would be? Do you see what God is offering them? Now, let me ask you this. If you were the children of Israel and God said, "Now you've seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings. You've seen what I can do for you. Are you interested in partnering up with me? What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, that's great. Now, for us to be partners, you're going to have to be holy. You're going to have to be obedient. You're going to have to, you can't be like you've been. You're going to have to change. Are you still in or are you out? Still in? All right. Okay. God says, let's go a little bit further then. That's what's taking place in chapter 19. The first offer of this contract or agreement is given. And the children of Israel, you notice in verse 8, what do they all say? That's right. All that you said, we will do. And so God says, all right, we'll proceed further then. And so God says, get ready, because I'm going to come down and I'm going to speak with you. One other thing, and I didn't go back and listen to I was not feeling well last week, and so I used my time of not feeling well to listen to or watch the class, and I tried 4 times, I think, and I fell asleep all 4 times. So I don't actually know all that was covered, and I'm sorry about that. And it wasn't a reflection on y'all's teaching at all on that. But in verse 9, the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I come to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you and believe you forever." God tells Moses that the way that I'm going to come and speak to the people is going to give them confidence in you. Did y'all emphasize that much?
We did.
Okay. All right. So what's about to happen, the reason that God's going to come down on the mountain the way that he is because he wants them to have respect for Moses and what Moses is going to say to them. And God's fixing to demonstrate in a very powerful way that Moses is the guy that you want to listen to. So what were some of the things that they needed to do to prepare for God coming in 3 days? All right, they'll wash their clothes. What else?
Rope off the mountain.
Rope off the mountain. Don't go close to the mountain. If you touch the mountain, what happens to you? You die. Nobody can even touch you, killing you. Yeah, that's right. This is serious business. All right, what else? Don't go near your wives. All right? Anything sinful with them going near their wives normally? Anything sinful with them not having freshly washed clothes normally? No. What's the point? That's right. If you're going to approach me, you need to be pure. This is a special occasion. This is holiness. Holiness. That's the idea of specialness. All right? Any other thoughts y'all have before we get into the material? Okay. So, the third day comes. By the way, if you'd had this instruction for 3 days, you've been preparing, roping off the mountain, hearing that, anybody who touches it's going to die. What's being built as this day gets closer? Yeah, this anticipation of, wow, God's going to come down. God's going to come down. So, on the morning of the third day, what do they hear? The rumbling of thunder and lightning. Now, this is the traditional location of Mount Sinai. This is thought to be Mount Sinai. Do you think they get a lot of rainfall there? Do you think that place probably hears thunder very frequently? I doubt it. And so here they hear the thunder and lightnings, and then a thick cloud on top of the mountain. And the sound of the trumpet was very loud. Who's blowing the trumpet? I assume that it's not men blowing the trumpet, I don't think, because they said they would just hear this. So I think that this is angelic beings or God. God is signaling the trumpet here in whatever way. And it was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp did what? Yes. So this anticipation now that's been building now turns into fear. One of our memory verses in the Bible drill is Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fearing the Lord is a good thing. and they have the proper reverence going into this meeting with God. And so Moses brings all the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. And verse 18 says, "And the mountain was completely in smoke, because the Lord descended upon it as in fire. And its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly." And then it talks about, "And when the blast of the trumpet sounded long and became louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him by voice." So this picture is we really need to get this in mind, because this is going to be built upon several times in the Scripture. Points are going to be made in the New Testament about this. The presence of the Lord coming down was just an overwhelming experience from the standpoint of seeing the mountain. This is probably, I don't know, obviously this is a volcano somewhere, but I was just trying to picture something in my mind of what this may be like, of this mountain boiling with black smoke and lightnings and thunderings, and the ground rumbling, and all of the little rocks around vibrating around, and the trumpet blast just getting louder and louder and louder, and the people are shaking. The people are literally trembling as this is taking place. This is overwhelming, and it's God's presence that's coming. God is coming down upon the mountain, and the people sense this awesome, awesome power that's taking place. Understanding all of that and trying to put yourself in their place is going to be very helpful for understanding where we're at in our relationship with God, understanding why they say the things that they do, why they feel so confident at one point and so weak at others. And I think if we can relate to this, and if we can try to appreciate this, then it can really help us. If they would remember this moment, their history or their future would have been very different. But they forgot this moment. Let us not forget this moment. All right, I've taken a lot of time, but you jump in there.
You did a good job. A trumpet blast, what was that usually a sign of? All right, what else? Something important? Yeah, get your attention for sure. War, danger, kind of like we have sirens that will set off when something, is going on, something bad's going on. So it was very scary, terrifying, terrifying. It describes it. Occasion here. God answered Moses by voice. I don't know in verse 19 there what that would have been like, but every person there, they have everybody's attention. There's nobody who is not paying attention and is not in tune with what's going on there. Doesn't seem like
that idea of Moses spoke and God answered him, going back to verse 9. "I will come to you in the thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you and believe you forever." Has God spoken to Moses before? Who's heard it? Moses. All right, but now God says, "I'm going to speak to you so that the people hear that I speak to you." Why is that significant?
so they'll believe you.
So they'll believe you. And so that when you speak, they'll believe that it's my words that you're speaking. So I'm gonna speak so that they hear. And so I think that's what's taking place there. Moses speaks to God, and God answers back, and everybody goes, "Whoa! Did you hear? God just answered Moses back." And so the people are being humbled right now by the incredible power and majesty of God on this occasion.
You can tell there's something different there, Lonnie, because, like you said, God had spoken to Moses before. But I have and I'm sure probably everybody's Bible references Hebrews 12:21, and Moses said he himself was afraid.
Yes. Yes.
So this was something different than what had happened before, apparently.
That's right. Excellent point.
You never forget times where you were truly terrified, right?
Yes.
In your life when whatever it was, a time that you were really, really scared, that sticks with you.
Yep.
What I wonder is how they.
Yeah, I know it. That's exactly right. All right, so the Lord said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to gaze at the Lord, and many of them perish. Also, let the priests who come near the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break out against them." Priest? Have we heard anything about priests up to this point? First reference we have. Who are these priests? Well, we assume that God has already given some instruction about the Levites. We're going to have that in detail later, but it seems that there must have already been some instruction about this at this point. And Moses said to the Lord, "The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai. You warned us, set bounds around the mountain and sanctify it." Then God said to him, "Away, get down, and then come up, you and Aaron with you, but do not let the priest and the people break through to come up, lest he break out against them." And so Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. And so that once again, it's emphasized that the people cannot approach; they cannot come. But you can come. Aaron can come with you, but the people can't come. And so it does seem that maybe the priest approached closer than the rest of the people, but none of the people were able to come up. So this is the scene going into chapter 20. Y'all have anything else that you want to point out or reference about the scene here?
So Moses goes up and then gets sent right back down and then
Yeah.
comes back up.
Yeah.
It's almost like he didn't want to. It's almost like he said, "I don't think you got to worry about anybody trying to
Yeah, that's
follow me up." But God told him to go back down anyway and get Aaron. He got
yes.
Aaron when he came back up. So.
Yeah.
One thing I thought about was when it said priest, only reference we had was Jethro,
Yeah.
and God allowed him to be advised.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting perspective there. That's good. All right. Chapter 20.
All right, so God's going to relay here to Moses what we know as the 10 Commandments. We saw back, what was Moses' role a couple chapters ago when we had his father-in-law that came to visit him there. What was going on with that?
Judging situations. He wanted to know about God's law, what to do, but he was kind of playing
Yeah, people. Yeah, he was kind of overwhelmed too. It seemed like people were coming to him, and he was making judgments, and Jethro had the suggestion to set up a hierarchy of people to help with that. But it was Moses' role in that to relay God's will to the people in different situations. And what we're fixing to see here tonight in the rest of our class, and then next class, is a lot of that kind of stuff that's going to help them out. It starts off with what we call the 10 Commandments, these major 10 points that we're going to focus on. And then we have some much more detailed stuff that will come into play on Wednesday night. But we'll start there in the first verse of chapter 20. And God spoke all these words, saying, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me." So we'll just stop one at a time and say what we need to say or break these down. But the very first and foremost, let me remind you of who I am and what I've done and what you've seen me do. And I expect to be the one and only God to you. Let's just get that straight right off the bat. It's me. You know who I am. You know how I've shown you how powerful I am. I'm the only God. You shall have no other gods before me. Anything on that?
No, that idea of I'm your Savior. I brought you out of bondage. So how do you respond if somebody saves your life? They rescue you from slavery. How would you feel towards them? Greatly indebted to them. Would your loyalty be divided? Probably not. And I think that that's what this is built upon. I'm the Lord who brought you out of bondage. So don't have any other gods before me. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very good.
wonder too if he was looking forward to what they were going, or what the people that are gonna come after them and gonna be following these, what they're gonna be tempted the most with when they go into this land.
Yeah.
I think in ancient times, multiple gods was
Yeah.
the norm. I mean, when I listened to it last time y'all did this, Israel's the first nation on record to only have one God that they solely worship as their God. So I think I think that was something similar to what I had gotten to. I believe that's good.
So a unique covenant is being offered here in that, and pretty exclusive. In other words, God's demanding about this. If this is going to work, it's going to have to work this way. I can be the only one.
So let's look at verse 4. You shall not make for yourselves a carved image. Apparently this was very common as well. Any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments. So a graven image, anything that is to be looked upon and revered in any way. No images, nothing, no images of anything earthly, and no attempts to even create anything that would, in their minds, reverence God, but give them a physical thing to kind of look at in doing that. That's not what he wanted. This is not a physical relationship that they have with him. This is a spiritual relationship that they have. He doesn't allow them to see him in any way. They don't have anything to base a physical object on. He doesn't allow them to see anything but smoke here. And he mentions that he is a jealous God. And a lot of times, jealousy carries a negative connotation in a lot of ways. It can be, but here, it's not. He wants a special relationship with them. He's a jealous God. He wants them to be his. He doesn't want to share them with any other gods or their interests or anything with any other images. Some ideas here. Is God a severe God in any ways?
Yes.
Yes, definitely he is. Is he a God of judgment?
Yes.
He is. But it also mentions mercy. Is he a God of mercy?
Yes.
So he is, and he reminds them of that. He says, I'm a jealous God. Just go ahead and understand what you're getting into here. You've agreed to be my people, but I'm a jealous God. And people that don't respect that, and people that don't respect what I asked for here in the way of these images, there will be judgment for. But showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. So you better believe I can take care of you, and I can show you mercy, and I can be your God. But I am a jealous God, and I expect you to have that same reverence for what I ask.
Yeah, that idea to the third and fourth generation was just kind of an ancient saying and you think about that. Whoa, that's pretty serious if he's gonna punish this to the third or fourth generation. And then that next phrase, but showing mercy to the thousands. From what I understand in Hebrew, it's the idea to thousands of generations. So you see the contrast. Yes, his judgment extends, he's serious about that, 3 to 4 generations, but his mercies extend thousands of generations. And so it gives us, he is the type of God that we can find mercy with, but is a serious God as well. And after all, isn't that the kind of person you would want to be in a covenant with? Is one who is serious and doesn't just let things, slip by without dealing with it. But at the same time, you want somebody who's compassionate and merciful, and what God is doing is he's showing his attributes here and saying, this is the type of God that I am. Is this the type of God you want to be in a covenant with? And that's the reason he's going through this and saying, this is what I expect of you, so that they can be considering, is this what I want to do? Jesus would say it this way: count the cost first. Before you become my disciple, sit down and count the cost, whether you really want to do this or not. That's the same thing that God is doing with the children of Israel here.
I think it was brought up when I listened to the recording, how some people will contrast God's character in the Old Testament compared to the New Testament. Many times in the Old Testament, he's viewed as much more harsh and judgmental and things. And the God in the New Testament, is more caring and loving and things like that. And it's the same God, and he is merciful, willing to be merciful to any who will love me and keep my commandments. They're here, just as it describes.
It harmonizes perfectly with the New Testament. You just think about it. I mean, not many of us or any of us are going to go out in our backyard and carve out a tree and get down and worship it. But we all have things that we're tempted to put ahead of God at times. And,
Yep.
This is a fundamental principle that we need to think about.
Yep.
That he's serious about putting him first.
That's right. All right, so verse 7. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. What do you think the significance of this is? I mean, if you've got 10 things, if you're going to limit, what you want to put in a concise package to give to somebody, and you got 10 items there, why would you pick this as something to say, all right, this is one of the big ones? Yes. Because once they lose reverence for God, it's a lost cause. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. You lose the fear of the Lord, you lose knowledge. You lose knowledge, you lose your direction in life. And so he emphasizes, don't take my name, don't use my name flippantly. And what's amazing is how, this is one of those evidences to me that there has to be a Satan out there. Because it makes no sense why people go out of their way to profane the name of God. But they do it. And they do it in every culture. I remember when we were in the Czech Republic, who is 95% atheist, and their more recent religious background is Catholicism, and they reverence Mary, and when something would happen, they would say, Jesus and Mary, as a flippant saying. It's like, why would you just try to take something that is supposed to be reverenced and make it something that just flies out of your mouth anytime that you act surprised? Or watch Home and Garden Network remodeling shows. What happens when they show the and God's name is used in vain 40 times in 40 seconds? And it's amazing how we're drawn to that. But that gives me great reason to believe that, yes, Satan is very active, because if he can even get people to just minimize the use of being able to say God's name, refer to God without really thinking about God, he's already got them on the path of losing their direction in life. Anything through verse 7? All right, I may spend just a little bit of time here in verses 8 through 11. It's significant, I think, for the understanding of what's going on here, and also because I think there's some really legitimate questions that are brought up by this. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh is the Sabbath. The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your sons, nor your daughter, nor your maidservants, nor your men servants, nor your maidservants, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who are within your gates. For in 6 days God made all the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So here is this instruction given to them. Now, I think it's been correctly noted that the first 4 of the 10 commandments deal primarily with who? Reverence to God, right? Respect and love for God. And then the last 6 commandments deal primarily with people. All right, so love God, love man. And I think that's, and so when Jesus said, you know, what's the greatest commandments? How do you answer that? And the second is like it. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. And so what you have in the Ten Commandments is you have a summary, a kind of a skeleton of the covenant and the laws that God wants them to obey. Love God and love man. What Jesus would say, take the whole law, and what you have is you can be summed up in love God and love man. And so I think that we see this here. Now, this idea, if you talk to a Sabbatarian, one who believes that we should keep the Sabbath today, one of the things that they'll say is, well, you believe in keeping the Ten Commandments, don't you? And what do most Bible believers in the United and Western world say? Yeah, I believe in keeping the Ten Commandments. Well, one of the Ten Commandments is keep the Sabbath holy. Do you do that? And the answers get kind of confused here because some say, well, yeah, I do Sunday. That's the Sabbath. Well, that's not the Sabbath. Sabbath is Saturday. And so then they point that out, and people are like, wow, I don't know what to make of that then, because yeah, that's right. And so what's under consideration here? Why don't we keep the Sabbath? All right, we live under a different covenant. Here's what the first point that I want to make. The Ten Commandments are not part of the covenant that we live under. They were the outline skeleton of the covenant that God is making with Israel right now. That's the first important thing to understand. Sabbatarians will say the fourth commandment is the only commandment that says remember, and it's the very one that most people are likely to forget. Yes, well, why does it say to remember the Sabbath? Because what God intended for it to do was to be a memorial. He wanted the Sabbath to be a memorial so that when they rested on the seventh day, they remembered something. And I want us to look at that just a little bit and think about that. A few passages here. In Exodus 31, let's turn over there very quickly. We'll just try to run through these real quickly. Verse 17, Exodus 31 and verse 17, talking about the Sabbath law. Look at what it says. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. In 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day He rested and was refreshed. It's a sign between me and who? The children of Israel. And so I want you to remember that we have this relationship. It actually becomes a covenant reminder. That's what it was for, was as a covenant reminder. Ezekiel 20 in verse 12 has that same idea. We don't have to turn over there and read that one, but it has that idea that it's a memorial of the covenant that has been made. But I do want us to take the time to look at Deuteronomy chapter 5. Deuteronomy chapter 5. And there's several points that probably need to be made here from Deuteronomy chapter 5, so we may even come back to this in a minute. Because what it is this is 40 years later, Moses talking about this day in Exodus chapter 20, when God was speaking from the mountain. And so in the first part of of Deuteronomy chapter 5, he goes through and he says, all right, you remember that day? You remember what the Lord said? And so he repeats that. So verse 12, here is the fourth commandment. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, nor your sons, nor your daughters, nor your manservants, maidservants, ox, donkey, cattle, stranger, maidservants, menservants. They all need to rest. Look at verse 15. And remember, all right, wait, remember the Sabbath. That's what it says, right, in Exodus 20. Remember the Sabbath. What are they to remember? Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out from there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. How many days of rest did they have as slaves in Egypt? None. God rescued them with a strong hand, and then He said, I'm going to give you a memorial. I want you to remember how I've rescued you by taking a day every week to rest. because you didn't have any rest. I'm the one who gives you rest. And so take a day every week to rest. That was the purpose of the Sabbath day. So understanding that and seeing what God was doing here will help us if someone comes up to us and says, well, I don't understand why you don't keep the Sabbath day. Well, I don't live under the covenant in which the Sabbath day was given in that. Second of all, if I did it, I would just take it as a day of rest. I couldn't take it as a memorial in the way that it was intended for it to be a memorial for them. That God brought me out of Egyptian bondage and gave me rest in that. So I think that those are important ideas to keep in mind in that. And then there is a spiritual significance that does apply to us. And we won't take the time to develop this, but in Hebrews chapter 5, it talks about there is still a Sabbath waiting for us. So many of the things in the Old Testament were shadows of the things to come. The Sabbath was a shadow of the thing to come. What do you think our rest is going to be? Heaven. Be diligent that you enter that rest, is what the Hebrew writer says. And so, yes, the Sabbath day was a pattern that was set up to foreshadow that one day God's people will have true rest. And we're waiting on that true rest. And so he calls that a Sabbath as well. So if someone talks about a Christian Sabbath, I believe there is such a thing as a Christian Sabbath. It's heaven. It's heaven. It's not Sunday. It's heaven. All right, any thoughts, comments on that?
I have a question about it
Yes, sir.
that I've never thought about until just now. And I'm not trying to throw us off track. I'm going to try to make it brief.
Okay.
So we're not bound to this because, number one, we're under a new covenant. And number two, we would not be in the lineage of this family. Therefore, we would not have been a part of this covenant. Obviously, we're all to be under the covenant of Christ. We're all to be under a new covenant. And you probably see where I'm going with this. If a person was from the Hebrew lineage today and was a Christian,
Yeah.
are they still held to this about the Sabbath, or is that something that's been completely done away with?
I would say that it's completely done away with. Here's my reason why. Look over, well, I'll try to answer this briefly as well. In Colossians chapter 2, in Colossians chapter 2, Paul is writing to a congregation that had both Jews and Gentiles, and apparently there were Judaizing teachers coming in and trying to persuade them that they had to keep the law. And they had to keep the festivals of the law. And so he says in chapter 2, Colossians 2, in verse 16, let no one judge you in regard to food or drink, or in regard to festivals or new moons or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance is of Christ. So what he's saying is he's going back and he's saying all of those things, the Day of Atonement, the Passover, all of those things were foreshadowing something else. So don't let someone tell you you have to keep the Passover, or you can't eat pork. Don't let someone convince you of those things. I think that was true for Gentiles, certainly, but I think that was true for Jews as well, because you have Peter going to Cornelius's house, which wasn't allowed under the old law. So if the things of the old law still carried over for the Jewish Christians, then Peter couldn't do that. But God said, what I've cleansed, let no man call common or unclean. And so even for the Jews, those regulations changed in Christ. Does that make sense? Did I answer that? Okay. All right. So we've spent quite a bit of time on that, but I did want to mention that. All right, so for the first four, honoring God. The last six, honoring man or loving man. Do you want to read those and stuff?
Yeah. So we're to verse 12. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God has given you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's.
So looking at all of these commands here, so there's the 10 right there. Going back to 19 in verse 5. If you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you will be a special treasure to me above all peoples, for all the earth is mine. You shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. How do they become a kingdom of priests, people who could approach God, and a holy, a special nation? By having special lives. Well, how did they have special lives? Well, they worshiped only God, and they honored only Him, and they treated their fellow man the way that they would want to be treated. They lived that way. And when they lived that way, they became reflections of their God. That's what God intended. That's what He's trying to emphasize here. Now, what they ended up seeing was a checklist. And so you get to the New Testament, and Jesus says things like, now you've heard it was said, you shall not murder. And they would all agree, yeah, that's one of the 10 commandments. Can't murder, can't murder. Is it okay to hate your neighbor? Well, yeah, that'd be okay. As long as you don't kill them, that'd be okay. No. See, the point of these commands was to teach them to be different, to be holy, to be special, to change their character and not live like the rest of the world. But they didn't get that. They didn't get that. And that was the problem. That was the problem with it. And so these 10 commandments were the skeleton. And so they were so representative of the covenant that God was trying to make that they were called the covenant, the tables of the covenant. The 10 commandments were the very symbol. That's why they were placed in the Ark of the Covenant. And because they were the basis agreement. They were the big contract that was involved in this covenant with God. All right, thoughts, comments? Making sense here? Oh, I've got so much more. I took too long on some things. I'm very sorry. I do want to paint this picture. I don't know if I do or not, because I do. Yeah, we'll go ahead and paint this picture because I can't waste any more time. All the people witnessed the thunderings and the lightning flashes and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar off. And then they said to Moses, you speak with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said to the people, do not fear, for God has come to test you that what? His fear may be before you, that you may not sin. So the people stood afar off. Anybody attempting to break through the barrier and get closer to God? No. Everybody's stepping back. Moses draws near the thick darkness where God was. The separation. Why would they listen to Moses? He goes to God. They're pulling back. This terror that's upon them, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Good. Yeah, it's a good thing. And I like what's said here. His fear may be before you so that you may not sin. I just want you to imagine this huge mass of people, 2 million people, gathered there. And at this moment, do you think anybody is coveting this guy's Egyptian Rolex that he's got over here? Nobody's coveting his neighbor's anything right now. Nobody's lusting after their neighbor's wife right now. Nobody's thinking about stealing something right now or murdering somebody right now. Why? They're scared. They're in the presence of God. And God says, you know what? If you just always had that respect for me, then when those temptations would never really be a problem for you. They would never really be a problem for you. The problem is when you feel like you're distant from me and that I'm not so awesome and terrifying. That's when the temptations become strong. That's a powerful lesson for us. When you find yourself tempted, if you'll have the wherewithal to just take some time to meditate on God's character, who He is, how awesome He is, how ever present He is, you'll find those temptations diminish greatly. Because when we want to give in to sin, what do we do to God? We distance ourselves as far as possible. We make him as unreal as he can be. There's no denying he's real for these people at this moment. And there's no temptation going on at this moment either. And God's going to say in Deuteronomy chapter 5, we don't have time to read it, but God would say, oh, that they would always fear me like this. Because if that was the case, they'll make it into the promised land. They'll make it into heaven. All right, final thoughts, comments, questions? Well, they did really good getting us caught up. And it took them I undid four lessons worth of work, or 2 lessons worth of work in 1 lesson, and got us back behind.
No, that's you finished correct, didn't you?
Yeah, but I've got more to say about that.
Oh. Do you think that the 10 Commandments on the tables of stone were all of that written down?
I think so.
Like, we see it. It's just
Right. Yeah, I think it was that
remember
whole.
the Sabbath, but it doesn't say all those.
Yeah.
Your male servant, your female servant, your.
Yeah. And I don't know. But I take it that it's that whole, all of that word for word, but it may not have been. It may have been short statements. Don't covet.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be beneficial, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with others that you feel like may benefit from it. If you need to contact us, please contact us via email at quinn.church@yahoo.com. Also, if you're in the area, we would love for you to come visit with us at one of our assemblies. Have a good day.